Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you're tuning in. We are Slava and Jonathan, bringing you the Side Quest podcast, where we talk about character development, stories, and all things that are world building. And we occasionally take side quests, because, frankly, that's how conversations work. Just as a reminder, this whole show is spoiler heavy. So sit back, tune in, and join us on this episode of Side Quest.
Good morning, Jonathan. On this misty, foggy
It's not misty where I'm at.
Saturday morning. Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it. Don't ruin the suspense. Don't be an evil spider from a ruining episode dimension spider.
Mm-hmm. Actually, speaking of other dimensions, you've probably seen this guy on socials occasionally. He's got like a long beard and he's just kind of scraggly old man. But I just saw him talking about like the Aztecs and the 2012 prophecy, right? Like the world's going to end. And he's like, you know what happened in 2012? Because I follow these conspiracy theory socials for fun.
If nothing else, they are fun.
Yeah. You know what happened in 2012? Aztecs and their prophecy. We found the God particle. And you know how we find God particles? Smashing atoms together. You know what happens when you smash atoms together? Alternate dimensions. And I was like, this is the best place to be on the socials. So good.
I really like the flat earthers. I immensely enjoy when they rage on TikTok about whatever they rage about. The conspiracy theory of NASA, how NASA's pictures that we see from space are all fake, and the moon landing's fake, and, you know.
I like the moon landing being fake conspiracy theory. I never watched the documentary, but I just like the idea that they hired Kubrick to make this secret film, and like that's one of the reasons they killed him after Eyes Wide Shut came out.
Even if you take out they killed him, the government hires Kubrick to stick it to the Russians for making it to space first. That by itself is a good enough conspiracy theory for me, without evil government cabals then murdering their asset because he wasn't playing along.
It's quite the show though, because the rocket took off, right? So like people were there for that.
Yeah, they sure were. Can't really fake that. There were witnesses that watched it go up. Not as easy to fake a live event as it is a video.
It is an interesting question. How were they able to send like the video signal back from, being on space, being on the moon? And then this gets into like an ethical filmmaking question. If, let's say that the rocket went to the moon and, they landed and whatever, but the video couldn't send the signal back, is it still true to shoot it and then air it, knowing that that's what's happened? It's a documentary ethics question where it's like, if you didn't get it live, does it really count if you do a re-dramatization, but don't call it a re-dramatization?
I'm going to say then, yeah, it's wrong because you don't earn trust points. Like integrity is everything, right? So I went to a lecture yesterday at a local seminary, and the guy was talking about how, as Christians, should we live. And he said, sometimes we live within a functional canon. We know there's these books of the Bible that tell the story of God's dealing with man and sending his son and the whole Christian narrative. It goes all of the books. But we cherry pick them. Sometimes it's wrong what we do, and sometimes it's just ignorance that leads us to do this because our church focuses on certain things, whether it's just we read the red letters or whether we really focus on the New Testament and avoid the Old. And Christians sometimes live in this kind of like with a functional canon instead of the whole canon. I'm not going to recreate the whole lecture here. We'll never have an episode. But the main point was like you have to have integrity. And integrity means wholeness. That you're the same at work, at home, with your wife, with your friends, with your neighbors. You have a full canon. You're living a full Christian life. Point of the lecture yesterday. My point, my application here, as a filmmaker, you have to have integrity. Otherwise, nobody will trust you. To answer your question very directly, yeah, it's wrong because the integrity is broken. Just say, yeah, we went to the moon. This is what we think happened based on what the astronauts told us. Or the video could have been, recorded locally and then shown later, right? Was it a live feed? We were getting live footage? I think there was a live feed, right?
Mm-hmm. I thought so.
Yeah. That's what I thought too. At the end of the day, I don't care if we're on the moon or not.
Yeah. Well, we didn't build space lasers, so it doesn't matter to me either.
Yeah.
But so integrity, right? I think about this word. People go back and forth on it. I think that the word integrity is amoral. And I say that based on your definition, as well as a definition I've heard from others and in the research I've done. Because integrity is to be one with your beliefs. And so
wholeness. You completely whole with what your worldview is, yeah.
So Hitler was integritous. His worldview was to destroy the Jews, and he did that.
Well, now I feel like we're playing semantic games because there's also overarching truths that govern what right behavior is.
The way you defined it was, and we don't have to go down this road necessarily, but it's something. This is a question I've literally thought about because people use integrity as if it's moral good, but I think integrity itself is amoral because it's to be one with your internal belief system, your worldview, and to live that out. Anyway, I'll leave you with that question. We don't have to answer it today, but that's a question that I have thought about for a long time and gone back and forth on because I was raised to believe that integrity was moral good, lawful good, if you will. We pulled D&D in here. And I think it's neutral. And it's how you outwork it because of how your worldview is. It's a conduit rather than a moral base.
There's a flip side to this. If you're not an integral person, if you're one person with your friends and another person with your wife, and you say that you believe X, but you really, when nobody's looking, you don't believe X, that's somebody who's an immoral person in the sense at least he's unethical. So it's not just, oh, well, Hitler lived up to his beliefs, so therefore the word integrity is amoral. That's a starting point for an interesting conversation, but that's not like a fact left by itself. There's so much to dissect there and to argue. But I'd rather talk about The Mist.
Well, yeah, so that's why I said we don't need to answer the question here, because it is an interesting philosophical question that it sounds like we disagree on. Not a surprise to me, not a shock.
I don't want a carbon copy of myself for a friend. It's
Why
okay
not?
that we disagree, because
build an AI.
Listen, two of us would destroy existence as we know it. There'll only be one Slava.
Well, I expected you to be a Jonathan, so.
Oh, well, maybe in a different parallel universe.
It's like
I am
Hitch.
a Jonathan.
It's like Hitch. 90-10. She comes 10%, you go 90. You don't remember Hitch?
No.
Well, he's trying
to the movie with the Kevin Hart. No,
yeah.
not Kevin Hart. So, Will Smith and
Kevin James.
Kevin James, yeah. No, I do not watch those kind of movies. I hate them with a passion. Rom-coms, anything like whatever Hitch was, nope. I don't blame the actors for doing it because I would act in those movies and take the money, but I would never recommend anybody watch them. I'd be like, I got paid. It's a good movie. Thank you, Jay Leno, for having me on. You should all go watch it.
They don't line up with your level of integrity?
Yes.
Anyway, The Mist. Before we dive in, you unruly adventurers, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a call to SideQuest.
So, The Mist by Stephen King. Let's do a little overview, shall we, Jonathan? Have you read this before, or did you just watch the movie?
So I watched the movie back in the day. It's probably 2008, 2009, because I definitely didn't see it in theaters. But this is the first time reading this story, and I remembered the movie, but I was like, I haven't seen it in a while. So actually, I ended up watching it before this episode as well. So read the short and watched the movie. Ended up buying the movie just because I was like, oh yeah, I remember this being good.
Yeah. It was pretty good. So The Mist is a psychological horror novella by American author, whom we all know and love, Stephen King. It was first published in 1980 as part of an anthology called Dark Forces, and then subsequently included in King's 1985 collection, The Skeleton Crew. So Dark Forces was a supernatural horror anthology, had 23 original horror stories published by Bantam Books and by a guy named Kirby McCauley, if anybody cares or knows who that is. So he went on to also compile other supernatural anthology horror tales. So this is all stemming from when horror really took off in America. For my research for King and Robert McCannon, which is a new author that I discovered and read recently, it seems in the 70s and 80s, a bunch of horror just took off. And fascination with horror, like the movie The Exorcist, the story of The Exorcist, that type of horror really found life in the 1980s and 90s. So, 2 interesting tidbits before we move on to the plot. The Silent Hill video game series bears many similarities to The Mist, and series composer and producer Akira Yamaoka has cited the novella as, quote, a great source of inspiration for the development of the original Silent Hill game.
I didn't know that.
And number 2 is the developers of Half-Life video game series also list The Mist among the primary influences for the game plot. The first game in the series was originally going to be called Quiver as a reference to the Arrowhead project in the movie and the book, The Mist. Well, the book. For this one specifically, the book.
The book, yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, you want to take us through the plot, Mr. Jonathan?
Sure. So, the plot starts like any story normally does. In the beginning. In a small town on the coast of America. The East Coast, to be specific.
Maine, to be even more specific.
Do you want to do this? Do you want me to do this? I'm telling a story here to our people. My people. You're not invited anymore. Get lost. I'll do this by myself. I'll walk into the mist. I've had a good life. Or no, you should walk into the mist. Anyway. Where was I? Okay, so our narrator, we follow David. Husband, father, calls his son Big Bill, which didn't happen enough in the movie, but happened quite a bit in the book, or the story, the narrative, the literature, the non-movie. There we go. I found it. I found the words. Anyway, so we follow him. He's a painter, and he makes movie posters for big Hollywood pieces, but he lives in this nice little town on the coast of Maine. And people who are locals there treat him with pleasantries, even though he was raised there, but he's a big Hollywood guy now, so whatever. He and his family endure a storm that comes through and just ravages the land. Ruins their boathouse. The neighbor's dead tree is the one that fell on it. That neighbor gets some comeuppance because his very nice car got ruined as well. And they end up going to town. He gives a little olive branch to the neighbor. They go into town to get some groceries, not think anything of it. Big Bill, the old son, comes with him. They head into town when suddenly someone runs into the supermarket screaming with blood on them. There's something in the mist. There's something in the mist. And everyone's like, why is, Tom Banana running around screaming about the mist? It's fine. It's just a mist. Nope, not true. They lock the doors. They huddle up in the grocery store. And then suspense continues. And there's bugs and tentacles. And people don't believe David when he says that there's something that's in the mist that took Norm. And they're like, you're just trying to get one over on me. But it keeps going. And people keep dying. All to the contrast of a woman who's also in the supermarket, trying to gather behind her believers into some sort of Aztec version of Christianity, where the demons that have come out of hell, which is what she claims, require a blood sacrifice, expiation specifically. And the thing about that is, in the movie, they expiate a few people, but that doesn't seem to solve the problem. But when you're in the throes of cults, yeah, who needs to think when you've got the leader there to think for you? So, anyway, they escape after dealing with the tumult that was not a band, but a mob of people trying to steal Big Bill, David's son, and bring him out for expiation. Child's blood, the blood of a virgin, if you will, because David couldn't be that because he slept with a woman while he was in the supermarket.
And he has a kid.
And he's a kid, yeah. They escape, and The story ends in the novel version where he's leaving this whole tale on a diner counter, and he just takes off and just kind of fades into the mist, if you will. However, in the movie, Slav and I were texting about this. I like the movie ending better because they end up going to his house to try to find his wife, who's strung up by spider webs and her flesh is decayed and whatever. Then they go as far as they can. Gas runs out, and they've got 4 bullets for 5 people. So murder-suicide pact. Pow, pow, pow. And then 10 minutes later, as he's screaming, waiting to try to get eaten by something in the mist, the military rolls up, and they're saved. What a stark contrast to an ending. It's so good. That's the plot summary to walk you through.
Yeah, I like both endings. I'm very much okay with the movie ending, and even King gave the director the thumbs up because the director reached out to King and said, hey, what do you think? This is what I think the movie looks like. Here's how we have adapted it. And in the ending, David has to kill the characters in the car only to realize he didn't need to do that. And all hope is lost because he's killed his son, the woman that he kind of has a crush on, 2 other people. And as he leaves this car after doing this, he realizes that the noises he's hearing is now the army coming in and rescuing them. And that woman that left the store telling everybody to go to hell because they wouldn't help her, she's the one that actually survives. She's seen on an army truck being hauled away with her kids. So it's an interesting perspective. King's story has a hope. And what's the author's name, the director's name?
Oh, I don't remember.
So King's story has some hope. The director's kind of shows the darker side of people losing hope. And even though David wasn't part of the mob, like he lost all hope. But the woman who fought going out in the mist, knowing that she might die, but she went out to grab her kids and to save them and left the mob behind, she was the one that actually succeeded and lived through everything, whether unscathed is probably a debatable term, but she lived through everything and got her kids. So that's an interesting ending juxtaposition there. But King gave 2 thumbs up to the movie ending. He thought it was fabulous.
I really liked it. I thought that was a quality way to end a movie. I do think, though, and then we can get back to the book, driving to go find the wife, I think I like the book version of this better than the movie, because you did waste gas, and you just have to like believe that she is going to get out. Also, I would have liked him wandering around the mist a little bit longer after he killed them. It felt like, oh, hey, it's time to end the movie. So...
Yeah, you know what? Totally agree with you. I think the wife part, there was a bit more struggle there. Like he had to discover her, not see her from the car window, and they had to drag him back in or something like that. I think that would have made that trip worthwhile from a storytelling perspective.
Yeah.
And if he wandered the mist longer and nothing happened, as in like nothing's happening, no creatures are coming to kill him, and then he fell upon the army disposing of creatures, and then he saw the woman who he refused to help along with the others, and then they met eyes, and that ended the movie. That would have been, I think, fantastic. But
also I think he killed his son in the movie too quickly. That tension, it could have been better. They like less driving in the mist and a little more okay. Those are my thoughts.
Well, let me push back a little bit, although I agree with you, but I'm going to play devil's advocate for just a bit. I really liked the beginning. The beginning of the movie is just fabulous filmmaking. So you have the artist drawing, no words are being said. Artist is drawing, lights go out, he looks out to the bay window, he sees the storm. We get a full view of the storm, camera pans back into the house, a family of 3. Next cut is them going down the basement. Next cut, storm and windows being destroyed by the tree. Next cut, next day, they're outside. Tells you everything you need to know. 4 pages of writing in about 45 seconds of film. So maybe when he looks at the gun, he looks at the woman, and everybody kind of agrees, all right, you're going to have to kill us. His son is about to wake up. There's a fast cut to outside the car. A gunshot is heard in a flash from the muzzle. So maybe they try to replicate like the fast cuts that happen in the movie, where they're just showing you the kid's waking up. We could spend 40 seconds of the father, talking to him, and there's crying, and he kind of holds him and shoots him. That could be a more dramatic, kind of more gritty ending, or we could just end it how we began it. Son wakes up, quick cut, boom, he's dead. And you have to imagine what happened in the car, right? So that's my devil's advocate play there.
Yeah, I also had the thought that he could have invited the old people to the back to do it behind the car. Now, it required them getting out in the mist, but then it's like, I honestly would have risked standing out in the mist than getting shot, I think.
Yeah. Also, as somebody who knows guns, understands guns, who's been trained how to use a weapon properly,
what are you telling me?
I know that in that car, he would have been deaf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He would have been deaf. Like, like 4 shots, he would have been deaf for like 2 days.
Probably.
Anyway, well, whatever it's worth, if we're going to pick apart the ending, that's also... and it really ticks me off when movies don't do, that's not where, when movies don't cover basic common knowledge stuff. When it comes to guns or food or anything else, it's just an extra 5 seconds of research to understand how this works. And I know it's a movie, and I know I'm supposed to suspend some belief. That's fine. I'm not asking for absolute perfection, but there's some things that just annoy me when movies do that kind of stuff. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's still a good movie. It's still a good book. Let's dive into some of the other points. We covered the beginning and the ending. What about in the store? Dude, let's talk some craziness in the store.
So we've got the locals, who are everybody except for the neighbor that rides with him into the town. And of the locals, you've got the full cast of characters, right? You got the store owner who's trying to follow the rules. You've got Ollie, who's, quickly sees the light of day, and he just tells the owner to go bugger off. You've got the folk medicine, pseudo Christianity woman who's screaming for expiation. You've got the other cast of characters who are interested in just surviving. Yeah, it's quite the full cast. It's colorful, if you will, colorful.
A good array of personalities.
There's a lot of drama.
Very much so. And one of King's tropes, if you will, is religious fundamentalists. Many of his stories have characters that are religious fundamentalists. And, I'm sure he's drawn on real-life experience from this. He grew up religious, loosely Methodist.
I didn't know that.
The way he would put it. I think his description of fundamentalists is pretty spot on. Now, quick side note, the word fundamentalist used to mean something good in the Christian world. Back in the 20s or 30s, there was a split among left-wing Christians who were taking a particular college way too far to the left, according to the more mainstream Christians. And when they split, the mainstreamers were called fundamentalists, and sometimes they gave the moniker to themselves, because they thought, we're sticking to the fundamentals of the faith. Just certain things that, no, Jesus is not just a fictional character or a moral teacher. He's actually the Son of God. And yes, the resurrection really happened. So that was a debate. Fast forward from the 1930s to almost the 2030s, 1980s, 90s, early 2000s, fundamentalism has a new definition, and it's that lady in the store screaming her head off about, the apocalypse, which, second side note, only means revelation. And, nobody's coming for you. The rapture's not happening, guys. Sorry to burst your bubble. But side quest over. But he does a good job. What do you think of the lady? I think the lady in the book is a lot more insane than the movie. Talk about her for a second. I think she's an interesting character. She's kind of savage in her beliefs.
I feel like the movie was more dramatic with that woman. But now you're making me question, like, if I missed some key moments with her, because yeah, they called for the son to be the one who was expiated.
Yeah, the movie was more dramatic because they actually killed a soldier, which doesn't happen in the book.
Right.
But the character, how she loses her sanity, and then how people are changed around her, how she grabs the people, how they gravitate towards her, I think is a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit more, not dramatic, sinister. A little bit more sinister in the book than in the movie. The movie is also very visual because movie.
Right.
So you have to do, the adaptation has to be altered for that. So it fits a visual narrative. And it works fine. I think it's a fine adaptation. But the old bat in the book is a little bit more sinister, I think.
Interesting.
Because in the movie, she seems just like a fuddy-duddy who, under pressure, has lost her mind. In the book, she's a regular person who is not a fuddy-duddy. She's not a fundamentalist, at least the way I read the book. She's the lady who owns the antique shop, and then she becomes a cult leader. You're like, oh, that escalated quickly. And then in her cult leader status, she embraces it very fast. She's like, yep, must kill the kid. And obviously she has some sort of fundamentalist, dispensational upbringing or knowledge for her to say the things she does in the book. That's really not explained. In the movie, it's obvious that she's already a true believer that just gathers people to herself. Anyway, I thought she was an interesting character. I think she was very sinister in the book. And I'm very glad somebody shot her because she was a...
Yeah, I just...
Good grief, man. Let's kill kids now.
I know that thinking is difficult.
Yes, it is. It burns a lot of calories.
And I don't even... it's funny, but it's also like everyone believes that they know how to think.
Yeah.
That's not true. Thinking is really hard because it's... I had a thought. I don't know. Like, you know how you're not supposed to use words to define words? You know, use the same word. I don't know another word for this. But I was driving, I think it was actually yesterday. And I had this concept come to me. What is thinking but asking questions? That's it. That's the thought, right? But the problem is we don't ask questions because we don't want answers. Which, honestly, and I know that I'm a Jungian in fanboydom. Fanboydom? Sure, fanboydom. I know I'm Jungian, but I think that the subconscious plays a lot more of a role in our lives than just sounds like a big circle argument, than we give conscious credit to, than we acknowledge, than we address, right? And I think this is why thinking is hard, because a lot of times we spend our energy responding to whatever with the first unction that comes to us.
Yep.
Or if we're in a really diehard situation, we revert back to feral instinct. And so there's three spaces of engagement in the world, in my opinion. There's feral instinct, which dogs and cats and animals have. And it's just you're living on instinct. You need water, you need food, whatever. There's response, where you're just kind of like responding to whatever's being thrown at you. And then there's thinking. And it's a third tier item. And honestly, I think this even lines up with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I realize this is like a kind of a weird side quest, but this is how my mind works. Because at the top of his, well, let me pause, because not everybody's familiar with Maslow. Sometimes you know things and you forget to tell people, right? Like, so Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a triangle, and each part of the triangle, it's like a pyramid, if you will. Pyramid's better. The foundation of the pyramid is your physiological needs of air and water and your body needs to keep functioning. Then we want safety so that there's no foul creatures from the mist that can come and get us. Then we want to belong with our friends. And I think that this is where people stop. And I say that because oftentimes when you choose to start thinking, you start realizing that you're not the same as the other. And the other is really just everyone else. It's not even just like, oh, different culture, whatever. It's everyone else. But we want to feel like we belong because I think that ties with safety. Because when I'm with the masses, I don't have to worry about as much because we'll just kind of like all chip in 0.5% and we'll be safe, right?
Yeah.
After that, you have self-esteem. Well, you have esteem, right? Which is respect and status and recognition and strength, freedom, whatever. After that, at the top of the pyramid, there's self-actualization, which is to pursue your highest potential, which is not something that most of us do if we're being honest, right? If we're being really honest with ourselves, the majority of people don't do that. So anyway, side quest to say these things. You look like you want to say something.
I do, because I think what you just said is fabulous. Very nice segue into our next discussion topic too, kind of killing two evil spiders with one stone. So one of the themes that I picked out for the book is the loss of humanity. And there's going to be a kind of two-pronged attack for my quest of the side here. To dovetail what you just said, I agree wholeheartedly. There is the subconscious that we give little credit to or ignore sometimes, and that kind of governs a lot of what we believe and do. And that goes back to what I will say until my dying breath, is your worldview governs how you act in any given situation. Your epistemology, your metaphysics, your ethics, your worldview, which you take for granted, if you don't think, will govern that. And that's why I think humans have such a propensity towards arbitrariness. We say stuff that we just believe is true, or we say it as if we have concrete evidence for it being true. And when pressed, we usually go into a defensive mode and will not provide evidence because we think wrongly that there are brute facts, where there are no such things as brute facts. So that's the dovetail to your thing. But the segue that your thing provides for us is right into this theme of the loss of humanity. Like the violence, the death, the loss of hope characters face, or, forget face, they actually lose their hope in stressful situations that they're presented in this book, right? Which is one big stressful situation and then a microcosm of other nonsense. And in these situations, these characters have to navigate the nature of their humanity and find ways to deal with the situation, like the horrors here of the situation. This is not me overcoming a weight problem. This is me facing a spider that's the size of a horse is going to eat me. Well, the only person who happens to be a woman that doesn't lose their humanity is the woman that leaves to get her kids, right? But everybody else loses it a little bit. Even though David's the good guy, he's the protagonist, there's people who are just drunk all the time. There's people who commit suicide. There's people who, bang people that are not their partners, which is David and Amanda. There are people who start a cult, which is a crazy lady who owns an antique shop. There are people who follow the crazy lady because she provides them some sort of hope, some sort of safety, some sort of actualization, self-actualization, because now, okay, I'm part of this thing. This woman knows, yep, this is from Revelation, even though I've never read the book of Revelation, never studied what it meant to its original readers. But yep, I saw it in a movie, and this woman is repeating it, and it makes me feel safe. That's that arbitrariness, going in the worldview, not unchecked, uncriticized, uncritiqued, self-critiqued worldview, and you get all these people doing all this crazy stuff. The books and movies remind us of this, but coming full circle, just like sometimes we don't give enough credit or credence to our self-conscious and don't critique our worldview, this is a repeatable offense. People in groups facing horrible situations rarely bond together well. There's usually a break in the tribe, and some of them go absolutely bonkers. Just like we see in The Mist.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I thought it was interesting that King had David sleep with that woman? Because it kind of feels like out of nowhere. I know that there's a minor foreshadowing for it, but yeah.
I think, no, I'm going to disagree. I think it's natural for people in those situations to use whatever their thing is, or maybe it's not their thing. Maybe sex is not David's things. Maybe sex was not David's thing, as in like a vice or something he goes to. But at this point, he's absolutely sure his wife is dead. In that moment, that was a release for him and for her. Now,
Okay.
you and I
Yeah.
might not do that.
Yeah.
And maybe we would. We don't know. I would think that I would not do that because I do love my wife and I'm fully committed to her. And if I'm stuck in a grocery store, whether it's monsters or Nazis or a barricade of water, or monster Nazis or spider Nazis, or a barricade of water during a flood, I would hope that, like, well, I don't know if my wife's alive. Oh, well, she's kind of hot. I hope it wouldn't happen that way. But for the sake of brevity, in the book, I think he fast forwards certain things. I think people would do that. People do that in stressful situations. People find solace in other people, and sometimes it's through sex. So, and they both know they were doing is wrong, and they both did it anyway. Now, we could argue whether that added to the story or not. It wasn't gratuitous sex, so I don't think it took anything away.
No.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, it struck me. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this part. And then I was thinking, does that feel? It feels like it's instinct, right? I forgot the note that you mentioned about, he conceded to himself, my wife's dead. Which, okay, all right, like that's a fair point. If you've conceded that my wife's dead, and it is, extenuating circumstances, I think I can say.
Mm-hmm.
You go, okay, he made the decision and he's looking for release. All right, so I point to you.
Excellent. Good stuff. Okay. What I propose is something we haven't done for a book in a while. Let's go through some questions I wrote down, because you were busy, which is okay. Let's go through some questions.
Throw me under the bus here.
Not Chad GPT, Slava GPT questions. And then, as we land the plane, I want to talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and do our scale that we haven't done since, I think, a Sanderson book. How about we do that?
That sounds great.
All right. Oh, yeah, okay. So, I'm going to pick a couple of questions, and you're going to pick a couple of questions. Let's go with this one first. Have you ever witnessed hysteria like the one described in the store? It could be on a micro level. It doesn't have to be necessarily full-blown child sacrifice, but hysteria nonetheless, where it's not rational thinking. It's almost bordering dangerous.
I think it was hysteria. Other people, it's on the line. So we had a tornado whip through some time ago. Girlfriend and I were out at a sushi restaurant. Sushi restaurant has a bunch of big windows, glass windows, and we're wrapping up, waiting for the check. Waitress comes up, hey, you're going to have to get in the bathroom. Like, tornadoes coming through, sirens are going off. And I'm like, I live like 5 minutes from this place, not even. And I'm like, well, you just give me the check, and I'll just leave. First, checked with the girlfriend, like, do you want to go? Yeah, it's raining, it's storming. Like, I didn't see a tree rip out of the ground, though. And this group of older folks are like, oh my God, we got to get in the bathroom, let's go. Ah! And they like just freak out. And I'm like, you're 60-something, man. You're fine. You survived this long. You'll survive again. I promise. Now, I think that I would be remiss and wrong if there was a tree that was ripped out of the ground in front of us. Okay, yep, let's just get in the bathroom. Fine. But it wasn't. It's a heavy storm. And like, yes, there's a tornado somewhere in the area, but it's not close enough to rip a tree out of the ground. Because I went to the side of the town like the next day and the day after. That seems worth going to the basement for, and whatever else, and the bathroom if you're at a restaurant and stuff. Because there were trees, like a couple roads that I was trying to get around traffic, full tree, like big old oak, across the road. Okay. All right. Which, and I think it ties well with the book here because the storm came through at the beginning. But these people just freaked out. And I was like, nah, I'm just going to take the 5 seconds to get to my car after I pay. And I'm going to drive the 5 minutes home. And then I didn't even go to the basement. I just hung out next to my windows because I was like, again, I'm not seeing trees ripped down in front of me or even the evidence before it. So I was like, it's okay. But that said, I understand that I hold a different level of self-preservation because I've almost died a variety of times in life.
Well, I think also if you live in the place where you live, and I was your neighbor for a while, kind of, state neighbor.
Yeah.
And we've had also tornadoes come through our area.
Yeah, it's not the first one you've ever seen or been a part of.
Listen, I've been in the middle of one a few times. Once because I just got stuck in a car in the middle of one, and once because I took a risk and drove. I could see it about half a mile away from me because it was an open field and it was there. So that's not really in the middle of one. But I've been close enough to tornadoes, and I understand their danger, and I understand they're unpredictable. But yeah, if I have a 5-minute drive to my house, and there's no tornado in sight, and it's a county over, I'm not going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
Yeah. And I realize it's a liability issue for them, right? Like the glass breaks and somebody gets speared through with a shard of glass, right? Like, okay, the restaurant's responsible for that. I think it falls under the Act of God clause. They're responsible. So I get it. And I'm just like, look, here's the deal. You don't want the liability. I want to go home. I don't know how long you're going to make me stay in this bathroom. I don't want to be in this bathroom with a bunch of people. So I'm going to go. I'm going to leave. Long story short-ish. Long story medium. I feel like I've witnessed the hysteria. It wasn't even that bad when I was in Georgia for a work thing, and there was an active shooter a mile away. We didn't even have that type of hysteria when we were there. It's just interesting. I feel like in those situations, I boil things down to the facts, where it's like, fact. There's a storm right now. Okay, cool. Fact. There's glass windows. Okay, cool. Also fact. Live 5 minutes from my house. Okay. Another fact. Haven't seen a tree ripped out of the ground. Okay. And if I'm driving home and I see a tree ripped out of the ground, I'll just go the other direction. It's fine. Whatever. Cool. I'm not going home right now. We'll go somewhere else that's away from the storm. Not a big deal. Same thing with the active shooter. It was like, fact. Active shooter's a mile away. I've ran a mile more than once. It's going to take him a while to get to me if he's even coming this direction. Fact. He shot up it wasn't like a pregnancy resource center, but it was it was an OBGYN. So clearly this is a very provoked attack toward specific women that he either knows or doesn't know. So also feel pretty good about it. So that's how I react to situations like that. It's like, what are the facts? What are we boiling down? So anyway, that's my little rant. Let me throw a question your way. And because you're the King expert, I just want to keep asking you King questions. King's known for his ability to blend horror and social commentary, and you mentioned that he was raised not Presbyterian, Methodist. What do you think the social or moral themes and issues are that he is trying to unpack here? Because it's happens in a small town. There's clearly one of the antagonists is this folklore or folk medicine pseudo-Christian woman.
Yeah, I think that's the commentary itself. What man-made fears and what happens when religion, and maybe for King, folk religion, pseudo-religion, and actual religion might be, synonymous. Nevertheless, I think his commentary there is that fundamentalism, as defined today, not as it was defined in the 30s, is dangerous, and it fosters fear and stirs up the biggest of piles and the biggest of pots when it comes to situations like this. It does not help. There's danger that comes with blind, rabid fundamentalism. That would be my takeaway on his commentary. And how other people react to it is also, maybe sub-commentary, micro-commentary. The sex, the booze, how different people react. And none of that's helpful. King is a recovering alcoholic or a
Really?
recovering addict. Maybe there was a commentary there. But I think reading the book and reading some of his other works where there was a character who was a fundamentalist and who was a little bit loony, the exploration there that I get from him as an author is how fear can lead to irrational decisions when that fear is masked or when the coping mechanism is fundamentalistic religion. It creates more chaos and destroys more than it protects. I think that's the commentary. And I would agree. Folk religion, pseudo-Christianity, fundamentalism is cancer. So when religious fundamentalism is used as a mask or a coping mechanism for situations such as we see in The Mist, it only leads to destruction. It doesn't provide safety.
Okay, I don't disagree with you. Do you think, I want to take this question one step deeper, do you think that the supernatural elements of The Mist explore any sort of themes or social commentary? Because you talked about the elements of the characters, and you talked about the, like, being in a supermarket, and, like, King is a recovering alcoholic, so there might be something there. But what about the mist and the monsters and the suspense of, like, death looming at your window? Do you think there's anything there that he's making commentary on, or anything like that?
I don't think so. I think it's an interesting device to tell a story. I don't think it symbolizes anything. The mist, that is. I don't think there's a deeper meaning, because what King has said about the inspiration of this novella, of this story, is he was with his son at a grocery store after a storm in Maine, and he was buying hot dogs and hot dog buns, and then he thought to himself, wouldn't it be an interesting story with people stuck in the grocery store after a storm and monsters were trying to get in? And then that was the idea, and The Mist was born.
I don't think you covered that earlier.
No, I missed that. I missed that in my notes in the beginning.
Because that seems interesting. Okay, so that's something that I really liked about the story, and I feel like this is a great transition, is I really liked the relationship that the dad and the son had. It felt authentic. It felt real. It felt, I think authentic and real.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And I'm just going to list a couple other things off that I like. It felt authentic. It felt real. I also liked the monsters and the mystery and the suspense. You do get to see parts and pieces of these monsters, but then they go back into the mist, right? You never get a real answer on, did we open a dimension? Did they come through from another world? Like, whatever. And I really, really like this set of characters that he had in his novella here. I don't know if it would have played out very well in a full-blood story, like a full novel, but I think it was enough because it's a short time period and it does it well. It's very slice of life, if I can call it that, supernatural suspense, whatever. So, what about you? What are some of the stuff that you liked in this piece?
I like the tension in both the movie and the book, but I'm going to focus specifically on the book for what we liked. The tension was really good. The description of human emotions, even David's kind of lusting after Amanda and how their sexual encounter happens, the build up to that, the build up of the woman, Miss Cromartie, antique store owner, goes full on cult leader. The build up to that was really good. And finally, I think King captured the human propensity to dumbassery really well. Because whether you can feel sorry for the characters, the ones who've committed suicide, whether you're kind of rolling your eyes at the people who are now drunk, for the last 17 hours, or the people who are losing their minds with a antique store owner, cult lady, all three, I think, are connected, explaining a little bit of the internal struggles that are happening with the characters. I think was pretty well done for a short story.
What about your dislikes?
Arrowhead Project. I know what King was trying to do, and I know what the movie was trying to do. Mm-hmm. It's what I sort of liked was that either it's a dimension, either it's just full-blown horror, which we don't know what's going on, and bugs are here, or the army screwed up and now these things are here, or it's all in the people's head, which is a theory I saw online, which I think is complete nonsense. But it's never...
Yeah, I don't think there's enough information or data to point to that.
No, it was... Listen, it doesn't matter. Stupid things are written on the internet all the time. So I don't think the Arrowhead Project is specifically revealed as the culprit. The army is revealed as the culprit. But I kind of feel in the book, it's kind of hinted at, and the soldiers do commit suicide. But at the same time, part of me is going, is this a trope that's not well used? Mm-hmm. Okay, it's a military project, and they open the Alder dimension. If that was explored a little bit more, maybe that would have been okay. Or maybe if it was just left as, wow, we're all getting hot dogs after a storm, and now there's spiders the size of horses. So I kind of go back and forth. I feel like I'm nitpicking, but there's part of me that just, something is being, part of me is bugged by this, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't like, and I don't know why this stood out to me, but when they shoot the old lady that is the cult leader, somebody screams out, "You murdered her." I don't know how to describe it. That's another one of those things, like, am I nitpicking this? Why am I reacting to this? Because, yeah, it's a shock that somebody shot the old lady. I mean, she had it coming because she was going to sacrifice a young child. But that just seemed, I don't know, it seemed off to me. I didn't like it. And not for the reason that, well, King wrote it in, and I didn't like that King put this line in it. It just, I didn't like that character, is what I didn't like. And then this, as I said in a previous episode, where movies, and now in this case books, get guns wrong. If a gun is really poorly made, like there's no safety on it, it's really poorly made, and the trigger is malfunctioning, yeah, if you drop it, there'll be enough force to trigger, no pun intended, the firing pin to go. But most guns, if you throw them on the ground, especially a revolver, will not discharge.
Right.
And I feel like people who have a particular dislike of guns, they will just write this crap in because they believe that this is true because they saw it in the movies, or they've been told this, or they're just being arbitrary because guns are bad, and that's why they're dangerous, because they just go off randomly. King leans left a lot on a lot of policies and issues, and that's fine. I'm not dogging him for that, but I think that's just kind of stupid and silly. That doesn't help the story. Okay, the gun went off. Okay, great. And what?
Yeah.
But that's whatever. That's just Slava's a little annoyance with the story. That is it.
Fair enough.
What'd you hate? Or didn't like?
Hate seems like a strong word, but all right.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm kidding.
Yeah. So the first thing that irks me is David and his neighbor. Like he's trying to show him that there's a tentacle in the back. It's like, David, I'm really insulted by the fact that you think that you can get one over on me because I'm from New York, blah, blah, blah. It's like, he's never done this to you before. Or if he has, it wasn't mentioned earlier, which should have been mentioned. He gave you an olive branch, like, yeah, okay, well, they took each other to court. Like, okay, but it's not like it was the talk of the town. It's just wasn't enough. Wasn't enough for me, right? And then the cult woman who, like, sees everything. I know that she's a whore because you two slept together, blah, blah, blah. It's like, could she have seen it? Yeah, okay, sure. Fine. But
hey, the only thing she could have seen is them going up the stairs if she was in the back of the store.
Right.
Well, she wasn't. She was in the front gathering her little minions. So, yeah, I'm 100% on that. I agree with you. That's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just like, okay, come on. And then the ending, right? Like, okay, it's kind of nice, dystopian, like, alternative suspense. He makes a note, we're at this diner, I'm leaving this thing here, hopefully someone finds it, blah, blah, blah. Like, all right, fine. But it, like, pokes the fourth wall in the short story. This isn't your everyday, my father told me, like, Hitchcock, it's da-da-da-da. And he's like, okay, all right, thanks. Just let me be in the story. Murder-suicide pact, or we ran out of gas, and now we're here at this diner. I don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah. The first time I read it, I thought that was going to be the story. That they're stuck here, and they're probably dying, and he's leaving his last will and testament or something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, those are just three, dislikes that I had. So why don't we do a quick rating and then we'll wrap this guy up.
Let's do it. So, plot story, 1 through 5. What do you think?
I'll give it a 4.5.
Okay. What about the characters?
3, 4. I'll give it a 4. I'll round it up.
You're the world building guy.
Yeah.
This is kind of the real world. There is an element of horror and suspense, so
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of not the real world. But there's not a lot to build on because it's Maine.
I'll give it a 4.
Okay. So that's 8, 12.
We're gonna round down. It's 4.16, but it's a 4.
All right. So for me, it's 4 all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would.
What would have made it a 5?
Ooh. The world, I don't think it could have been a 5 because I don't know. That'd be too difficult to answer here in the podcast. For the plot and story, I think if I just had an answer, but I don't know.
So
That's a good question.
Well, you're thinking about that. The reason I asked this question is I asked myself this question. When I'm rating something, whether it's a meal or a book or a movie or whatever, if you don't have a Likert scale, which is that 1 to 5 rating, so researchers, I learned this in college, researchers will give each of the numbers basically a background rating. So if it's a 1, it's like, this person hates it, we need to go back to the drawing board. A 5 is this person loves it, blah, blah, blah. And so they have what they've shown you and like, hey, and they tell you what their rating system is. And then on the back end, they have a different rating system for what those mean in more of a sentence-like structure, usually. And so I ask myself the question, like, well, what would make this meal a 5? What would make this story a 5? And the thing is, I don't always have an answer, but I just know that it's not a 5.
Right. For the world, I don't think I could answer it. For the characters, if there was less of some of the cliche stuff, right? Small towns don't like out-of-towners. Okay. I mean, that's true, and I've been in small towns that don't like out-of-towners. But if there was a little bit more exploration between relationships that each character had, maybe a little bit of a background of the crazy cult lady, maybe the fact that Amanda and David slept together wasn't because they just found each other attractive in a very stressful situation, but hey, they went to high school together and David came back and she always stayed or something. That would have made it a 5 for the characters, more exploration of their relationships, and maybe that would have added 4 pages to the novella. For the world and the plot, I don't know, but for the characters, that's what I would have liked to see more. Now that I'm being put on the spot, which was a good choice of you. Yeah. That was a good question.
Fair enough. All right. Well, this was The Mist by Stephen King. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a side quest. Stay tuned next week when we dive into
Black Flame by Will White.
We're diving back into the world of Cradle, iteration 110.
Can't wait.
No, it's going to be great.